All right, we are ready. Good evening, everyone. This is Senator Saud Anwar. I want to thank each and everyone who is joining us this evening. Um, I am here today, and it's a very important conversation. The month of June is a PTSD awareness month. And actually, if you look at how our community, people in our society, individuals at various professions are impacted every single day with PTSD, I believe sometimes that every single day should be a PTSD day and every month should be a PTSD month. But having said that, at least let's recognize the month of June is a PTSD month, and we have an exceptional group of individuals who are going to speak to us today and who are going to educate me and hopefully share their experiences and education with others and the community as well, and then have a best opportunity to learn about PTSD, how it can manifest, and what are the different situations, some of the situations that people can be impacted. What I will do is, as our speakers speak, I will give you a brief update on them. I'll just tell you a little bit about some of the ones who are here right now, and then as we ask them to speak, I will talk a little bit about them. Again, I'm very thankful for Sarah Muska, who is the member of the Board of Selectmen for the town of East Windsor. Sarah has been instrumental, and she is very brave because she is been sharing her story, her perspective, and making sure that people in the community know that they're not alone. And she's going to speak to us today as well. And then she'll be followed with Karen O'Connor, who's the executive director of the Network Against Domestic Abuse. And we are honored again today that Sergeant David McNeese from the beautiful town of East Windsor is going to share from a first responders perspective, the police department's perspective as well. And then we have veterans perspective that Sergeant Jerry Wright will share with us. And we are very thankful. One of our psychiatrists from Yale, Dr. Ali Shamsi, is going to share about how this is impacting the people, what is the pathophysiology of the illness, and then what the community can do. With further ado, and then we'll have a question and answer session. So feel free to join in, feel free to write your questions, and we will make sure we will ask our panelists to join in and help us out with answers. With that, I would ask first thank again Sarah Muska for your leadership or your efforts, and you unmute yourself and share your perspective with us. And thank you again.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. And I'd really like to sincerely thank Dr. Anwar. It's been a pleasure working with him on putting this together. I really appreciate his willingness to talk about this because this is so often not discussed. There are several of our family members, our neighbors, and our friends who deal with this struggle on a daily basis. As Dr. Anwar said, June is PTSD Awareness Month. So there's no better time to talk about this than now. This is a very important topic to me, something that's very near and dear to my heart. It's very important for me to help others who may be in the situation that I was a few years ago. I don't like to refer to myself as a victim. I like to refer to myself as a survivor. I was in a very abusive relationship, both physical and mental, and went through a lot of trauma and a lot of traumatic events within a 10-year period. The best thing I've ever done in my life was leave that relationship. In March of 2017, I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. I didn't know that I had that until I, finally had the courage to seek help. I would describe my experience with PTSD as a struggle with myself. No one knew what I was going through. I didn't talk about it with anyone. I wanted so bad to let go of the past, but the past would just not let go of me. There were triggers. If a certain song came on that happened to be playing when I was experiencing something traumatic, it would bring me right back there. Rain, for example, a certain food, no matter where I was, whether I was at work or out with a friend, it would just bring me right back there. Paranoia, certain times of the day, thinking, maybe this is going to happen to me again. lots of flashbacks, living in fear. Panic attacks was something that was very frequent for me. Not going into too much detail in my personal life, but I did have a restraining order that was in effect that was constantly being broken. So, I think that things were going better, and it just kept coming. So there was a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. I was never suicidal, but I didn't know what my purpose in life was. I was in constant pain, couldn't function. It was a struggle for me to get up in the morning. I had to kind of coach myself to get through the day. I began really, good at compartmentalizing, was always numb, no feelings. But the second best decision in my life was seeing a psychologist. I did finally reach out to someone who referred me to someone, and speaking to a non-judgmental third party was an excellent decision. It gave me the ability to heal and accept the past. So I'm reaching out to all of you to let you know that there is hope. If you're experiencing this, or if you've, in an abusive relationship or left, an abusive relationship, please talk to someone. Reach out to me. Reach out to a family member. There is joy in life, and if you told me 3 years ago I'd be where I am today, I wouldn't believe you. I've made tremendous strides. It still is a struggle here and there, because there are certain things that bring you right back, but I have the skills now to deal with my anxiety. And I did go through eye movement desensitization, and that was something that really helped me. And if you know someone that is going through this, don't be angry with them. Since I wasn't very open in discussing what was going on with me, people became mad at me and angry because they didn't understand why I was isolating myself. And some of those relationships I've still lost because people just couldn't understand. So if you know someone that is going through this, be patient and be kind. It does take time. But I hope my story helps you, to let you know that there are resources available. If you're just experiencing domestic violence through the network or the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence, there's hope for you. So thank you for letting me share my experience, and I hope this helps.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you. And I want you to just know that this takes a lot of courage to share what you are sharing, and you're doing this with the intention to let everybody else know that they're not alone, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And then when they're in the midst of the tunnel, they may not see that light, but you are showing that light to a lot of people. So I appreciate that, and it takes courage to think about your experience and then share it with everyone. So I appreciate that. I want to have our next speaker, who is very much connected to Sarah, what you just said, which is our executive director for the Network Against Domestic Abuse, which is Karen Foley O'Connor. Karen, thank you so much for making time for us today, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much for asking. I'm actually on this call with one of my family and shelter advocates, Alexandra. I just wanted to say that the state is regionalized to 18 separate agencies. The network covers North Central Connecticut. We provide whatever assistance a victim may need who is experiencing domestic abuse. I just want to say that I'm going to actually give you our hotline number, and we'll give it to you if you want to put it into the chat box. It's 860-776-2408. And we're basically here to answer questions. I just want to add that I just took over my position after 25 years with the state police as a trooper. So I have experienced trauma on many levels, dealing with witnesses and victims and cases. And now I'm pleased to be with this group that truly works tirelessly to not only just help people immediately, but to get them to new lives, new homes, sustainable futures free from abuse. So we're here for the Q&A at the end. Alex also does some work with the VA, has done some work with the VA in the past. So whatever questions you have for myself or her, we're here to provide that.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you, Alex. You guys have been doing some very special and very life-saving work. I cannot thank you enough, and I know at the Capitol, when somebody from the network comes and says that this is what is needed, everybody listens. It's something that is very dear to each and every one of us. And Alex, for the work that you're doing for homelessness is very important as well, and we'll touch on that later this evening. One of the common reasons young women become homeless is because they are actually victims of or survivors of domestic abuse, who actually identify a way to escape, and sometimes there is not a support system right away. And then that's where I think, Alex, you and Karen, the network comes in, which help people out of that challenge. Look, this is one manifestation that we have just touched on. I want to have a conversation with our police officers, the first responders, who are the ones who actually experience the challenges in a manner which only they would be able to share, and how they are impacted by it and scarred with that is something that is above my capacity to explain and understand. But I want Sergeant David McNeese for East Windsor Police Department to share with us your perspective and your experience and your brothers and sisters' experience. Unmute.
Okay, Senator Anwar, thank you very much for making me a part of this conversation, because it is a very important conversation that we should all be having. And I'm glad that June is PTSD month. Just so everybody knows, the reason why I'm so interested in this is because of many of the things that I do in the department. One of them is a crisis intervention trained officer. I'm also part of the peer counseling team. I'm a hostage negotiator with the Capital Region Emergency Services team. And I also have my master's in criminal justice, although all my undergrad work was done in psychology and family services. So it's very close to me. My sister went through a very traumatic event like Sarah did when I was just into college. So it's touched me in every way possible. And one of the ways that it has touched me the most recently is that I have a very close friend who's been in EMS, fire services, law enforcement, and emergency management and dispatch for 37 years. And over the past few years, he was diagnosed with PTSD. I'm just going to refer to him as D here, but he is he's the type of person that everybody wants in their life because he cares about everything so much. And he, as a firefighter, EMT, paramedic, he saw everything that we see as first responders every single day. And what he taught me after he was diagnosed with this is that it was the cumulative effect of everything, of all the trauma that he saw day after day, of the bodies, of the people that were in pain, of just everything that he saw started to have a cumulative effect on him. And eventually it got so bad that he was feeling bad about everything. And he wrote down a lot of things for me to bring to you. I know I have a time limit, so I am going to get into those a little bit. But I want you to know that he grew up with me from high school, and he's the type of guy that you want working in any department that you're in, because he's that good of a person. And again, I'm going to refer to him as D, but he gave me a list of things that I wanted you to hear, because they are the triggers, they are the reactions and symptoms, and they are his daily struggles. And Sarah already touched on one of them that he is right at the top of his list, and that was specific songs. specific songs are one of his triggers that will bring him right back into a specific trauma that he experienced. And since Sarah talked about it, it's great to highlight that. There's also certain smells that he has that will bring him back to a specific trauma. There's like the smell of the sight or smell of concrete or fire will bring him back to it. He has reminders of people in different areas or different events that will bring him back to some trauma that he experienced. Small spaces are a problem for him. It's one of his triggers. Elevators, medical tests, physical contact with others at time can be a trigger. And everyday safety violations, believe it or not, he goes out and he sees a safety violation. And unfortunately, that shoots him back to what he was doing previously, and that'll start to bring back all the memories. Dangerous drivers, a cyclist not wearing a helmet, something as simple as that can trigger it. He has these reactions to, and he calls them symptoms as well. He has disassociation. He loses time, and he has this feeling of not knowing where he is or who he is at times, and he can act very impulsively. It's happened to him several times where he's had no memory of something that happened, and his wife has to remind him what has happened. He has flashbacks all the time. He relives an event as if it's happening to him in real time. He has nightmares all the time. His sleep, when he does get sleep, it's not very restful and it's fragmented. He wakes up in a panic or a cold sweat often. He lashes out sometimes, and it's over a simple reaction that he didn't really have to lash out for. And he knows it afterwards, but at the time, he doesn't realize it. And then there's simple things like he'll go out and want ice cream, and somebody will not offer him one of the flavors that he has and that they have, and he just loses it for no reason whatsoever. He says that's definitely the PTSD things coming back to him. He physically has to leave a space at times when there's some type of conflict, because he can't talk it out and he can't problem solve because he has that overreaction to something. He says that's all part of his signs and symptoms. The daily struggles that he tells me about are irritability, mood dysregulation. He has a low tolerance for any type of distress. He has a lack of energy. He has a hypervigilance, which I think you see in almost every first responder. No matter whether we think we have PTSD or not, we all show a little bit of that hypervigilance. I know my family tells me all the time that, when I'm out in public, I'm not the same person as I am when I am at home. Well, I'm on the job then, you know what I mean? I'm in the moment, and I feel like I have to watch everybody. Dan feels that all the time. He has a lot emotional disconnection, difficulty finishing tasks or projects, and he has serious memory issues. He was open and willing to share all this with you because he wants to help any person that might have PTSD. And I know my time's just about there. So I just want to thank you all for letting me be a part of this conversation, and know that I take this into my repertoire whenever I try to communicate with somebody. And when I run into somebody with PTSD, I know what I'm looking for. And luckily, Dan had a situation where he had gone overboard and needed some help, and I was able to jump in and help him. And I am very glad for that every single day, because it would be a tragedy to this world for him not to be around right now. So thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Sergeant McNeese. Thank you for sharing this, and thank you for sharing with Dee. And if you see him, give a hug from me, and God willing, I would love to hug him as well. And I want to share some statistics that I was looking at, and they are heartbreaking, because the number of police officers who died by suicide was more than triple that of officers who were fatally shot in the line of duty. So this persistent low-grade trauma adds up, and people actually have that with they're being protective, and this became very real. East Hartford is one of the other areas that I represent, and then one of the police officers there, Paul, had taken his life, and his wife, and I had a chance to meet with them. And then we were fortunate, I was fortunate to be able to be part of passing a bill, the which is now a law, PA 1990, which was SB 380, where we actually make sure that our police officers, fire department personnel, they're going to be protected. If they get impacted in their ability, it's a work-related illness, it's a work-related trauma that actually has an impact. And because of the pandemic, we were not able to pass the law for our other first responders, the mental health workers and wellness that is needed for our EMS workers as well. That was very critical. I have planned to put that back in again, hopefully to make sure that all first responders are going to be part of this, because their trauma is also very critical and very important to protect.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you, Senator.
Of course, and we'll have more conversation. I can see a lot of questions coming. People, if they want to write their comments, share their experience, have a question, and make some thoughts that they want to share with us, please write your comments and continue on. Our next speaker is an amazing individual who has been an advocate for our veterans. When I was talking to my friend Bob Like about who's the veteran who should speak about this, he actually did not even take a second. He said, Sergeant Jerry Wright. He's always there helping people, the veterans who are being impacted by the trauma. And Jerry, I'm thankful for you to join in and also share the trauma, because you're reliving the trauma when you talk about it, and the amount of work that you do for every single veteran that you come across is heroic, and the war has never ended, and you've been a warrior helping saving so many lives and working hard. So thank you for joining us, and then please share your thoughts and experience if you could.
Well, thank you, Senator, for having me. I seem to be the oldest one in the crowd, so I classified as a baby boomer. And if anybody knows about baby boomers, we were product of the World War II generation. And as we grew up, we were told to deal with it, suck it up, don't worry about it, it's fine. And that was my dad, who was a World War II, and my mother was a World War II veteran as well. So at 20 years old, when I went to Vietnam, it was a culture shock to begin with, because I grew up on a little dairy farm in upstate New York, and I didn't even know what military was or anything like that. Well, after my first tour in Vietnam, my first tour actually was 13 months because I got caught in Cambodia and I couldn't get out. And that's something that I think about there quite a bit. And my second tour was all monsoon, it seems like. So Sarah was right. It has to do with rain. Of course, we had the music from the 60s, which was absolutely wonderful. And then there are certain songs that bring me right back to what was going on at that time in 1969, 1970. I was a gunner on a RAP patrol, at a 50 caliber gunner. I was a heavy equipment operator. And I'm also a recovering alcoholic. So I quit drinking in October 5th of 1985 because I contemplated suicide. And I was driving down in Salem, Connecticut on Route 85 on my motorcycle. I picked out a tree to commit suicide at 2:30 in the morning. And something grabbed me from the back of the neck, took me off the motorcycle, stood me up in the middle of Route 85, and the bike was sitting there on a kickstand, idling. And I have no recollection of that whatsoever, except I looked up and said, someone's got a better plan for me than I do, because what I'm doing is not well here. And I have been sober ever since. And that's a struggle because I really like to drink. To go back to the PTSD part of it, it all relates to suicide as well, because I believe, and this I'm talking from me, is that we need a purpose. We need to be a purpose. We need to have a purpose. When I sold my business 5 years ago in Bolton, I went from 70 hours a week for 30 years to 0 in one day. And I needed something to do, or I was going to go nuts. So I picked on Agent Orange. Well, of course, that's all has to do with Vietnam. So I live Vietnam every day as an Agent Orange advocate things for the veterans. But that helps me to heal because I think we should talk about it. And I talk to other veterans like, Bob Brill, and those that are in my circle. I don't like loud noise. I don't like the 4th of July. I hear an M80 go off and it sounds like a 105 in the distance. It brings me right back there. When I smell sweet flowers, it reminds me of poppy fields that we bulldozed over. And I can smell campfires because the Vietnamese cooked everything on campfires. So there's a whole lot. In fact, the other day, this is interesting, what the sergeant was saying as well, is that I saw a shirt laying in the road, and we were told never to pick up a shirt or a pair of pants that was in a road because it could be booby trapped. And I was right back there. I was right back into Vietnam saying, don't touch what's in the road because you'll get blown up. So you think about that, and it's tough. And I'm very fortunate that the VA in Newington, and I have a good psychiatrist that helps me there, is acupuncture. And acupuncture for PTSD is awesome. Absolutely. I said, and I'm feeling it now because I haven't had it in the last 2 months, but there are pressure points that I'm working on. And to sit and talk to a psychiatrist who's probably old enough to be my daughter, who's never been in combat, is always a hard thing to do. So it's always nice to be able to talk to a previous person that served in the military. We can relate a little bit, we can tell jokes, and we can go on with our life. I'm a workaholic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. And according to my wife, a pain in the butt. Well, that's okay, because I've learned sort of how to deal with all that. And it's not an easy thing. And it's hard. It is hard to talk about. How do you know to talk to somebody that has PTSD? And that's what the question I have to you, doctor, and to the doctors coming up from Yale. I did go to Yale about 2 years ago, and I had a 3-day where I would sit and talk to the people from the VA. They put me in an MRI machine. They hooked me up to electrodes. They would give me a shot every now and then to see how my brain was going to react to the PTSD. And they showed me the movie Platoon. Well, that was wonderful. When I come out of that tube, I was not in good shape to drive home. I'll tell you that. So I've kind of been there. I've been homeless for my life. I'm in a happy place right now. I'll be 72 in July, and I enjoy riding a motorcycle, and I really enjoy helping veterans. And I'm so glad to meet you, Dr. Anwar. You're a special person. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and thank you for what you're doing for Agent Orange. I think our challenge for Agent Orange, that's a different conversation. I think we'll have to have a discussion around that, because we have, as a society, just scratched the surface of the damage Agent Orange has done to individuals in their lives, and that is a war that lives inside of them in their bodies. So, but your help for others is a blessing, and the divine force that stopped you that day has saved so many more lives. So thank you for listening to that divine force, and thank you for sharing your perspective. And I'm sure there will be some questions. I just want to mention that there are some bills that we have worked on. We have looked at how we can get veterans to be back from the military and do machinist work as well. And all the workplaces that they would go back into, there would be training for the employers to understand how to identify challenges and how to help them. So that's a program that we actually passed to be able to move in the right direction. And this was what was Public Act 19-129, where we were able to distribute information about mental health to our employers for our veterans who had reestablished their new occupation. Our next speaker is a psychiatrist, and we expect him to solve all of our understandings. Dr. Shamsi from Yale, who's a principal psychiatrist at the Connecticut Valley Hospital. And so, Dr. Shamsi, please share your wisdom with us, and what can people do in the community, and then we'll have more questions going forward.
Thank you, Dr. Anwar, for getting us all together. Can everybody hear me? Okay. And I'm sorry, I'm awkwardly positioned in front of the computer with the light shining on my glasses, but I wasn't able to hear very well. So everybody can hear me, right? Okay, thank you. So, thank you, Dr. Anwar, for getting us all together and giving us the opportunity to talk about PTSD, which is a very complex mental illness, but it is also something that we should see as primarily a change in personality. We know a lot more about it now than what we did a few decades ago, but there is a lot of PTSD that we still don't understand. And even if we do understand, the community as on the whole is not able to appreciate it. And so first of all, we need to thank Sarah for coming forward, and survivors like her who are talking about the experience, who have the courage to talk about their experience, because that makes it easy for those that are afraid of talking about the experience. It gives them an ally, it gives them a role model. So if it requires courage, but it also sets a path. So thank you very much for doing that. And thank you, Sergeant Wright, for serving the nation. Thank you for your service. The nation and society let down a lot of our Vietnam veterans because their condition was not recognized, and that was the time of understanding of our society that we sort of started to move away from something that we thought was just, you pull up your socks and shape up and get on with life. And we started to understand this as a condition that changes the brain. But your generation was the generation that had to go through the sacrifices for us to understand more about this condition. So the way doctors would like to understand PTSD is it is a condition where an individual is in a perpetual state of fear. So if you are living with a spouse that is constantly abusing you, one is forced to be in a state of constant fight or flight mode. But there are two kinds of traumas that we go through. One is the acute trauma that somebody who is a victim of a motorcycle accident, for example, or a combat veteran who experienced a one-time, let's say, a suicide bombing attack. But there's another kind of trauma, which is known as a chronic trauma, which a lot of first responders that we talked about go through. It's not a one-time life-threatening trauma, but it's a series of small traumas that they go through every day, day in and day out, and they have to struggle through it. And it pretty much changes their personality in the way a survivor of PTSD has to experience and eventually emerges. So sometimes we try to not understand that somebody who is going through a series of traumas every day, day in and day out, they can also have a change in personality. Oftentimes what we see is the closest ones to us, our families, our friends, our co-workers, will start to see a change in personality. My daughter's not the same as she used to be. She's more irritable. She's more snappy. She's not the pleasant self that she used to be. What it does is that it does to those that go through the trauma is it pushes away their support system, and it puts them in a situation where the same folks that were going to offer them help and support are the ones that get pushed away by the change in personality. And that's where community comes in, and that's where organizations that Karen is a part of, for example, they play a vital role in identifying these folks that need help and giving them the services and the support that they need. We often say that, if if there is somebody close to you that you know who has gone through what sometimes would say a one-time big trauma, or somebody that you wonder is going through a difficult phase in life, maybe having a difficult marriage, or is sort of talking about stressors in life, that is a new conversation, and you see them presenting differently, reach out to them. Reach out to them, talk to them. If you have a family member, if you have a daughter, if you have a parent, if you have somebody who's a first responder, if you have somebody from the services, from the police force, reach out to them and ask them, is there something going on? Can we offer you some help? You can start with your doctor, for example. You can approach your primary care doctor. One can counsel these individuals and tell them that, it's always a good idea to talk to your doctor about it. Oftentimes, doctors and primary care physicians have resources that they can direct to. But the community, our folks around us, people that know us, are the best help that come up. We talk about medications, but medications have a role, but not the full role. They can sort of lower the chemistry, change the chemistry of your body, so one is not in a sort of constant fight mode. But that's just about what medications do. What really starts to rehabilitate survivors is therapy, is a support system, is a network of friends and families that help us bring back these individuals to what they were before they started to experience the trauma. And a lot of new research is going on in other modalities that are not medications. So for example, Sarah shared her experience with the eye therapy. That is a fascinating new approach. It's not new as a therapy, but it is getting more recognition than it was getting in the past. So these are sort of fabulous techniques that help and are able to make huge changes in an individual's understanding of the symptoms that they're going through. So therapy the role is not just to help you get out, but it also to help you understand yourself better. And there are new modalities like acupuncture, which Sergeant Wright mentioned. It is just a holistic approach of the way we understand our body and its connection with our environment and our senses. So, I mean, we can talk a lot about PTSD, but I think what the panelists are doing, being solid members of our community, providing the support and the help that we need, being members of the organization that we are, I think that's what keeps survivors of PTSD going and giving them the resources that they need. I think we'll leave the rest of the time for questions and see what other comments are. But we're so grateful to folks like the rest of the panelists over here for contributing to society. And thank you, Dr. Anwar, for getting us together.
Thank you, Dr. Shamsi. So I will start with one of the questions. See, in let's say, I'll use the example of our veterans, but also our police force. And many of the first responders, they are trained to have a persona of being strong and being there to undergo any challenges and have a straight face and not show emotions, even though they're going through the emotions on the inside. And that becomes sort of part of the personality. So at times people are not able to show what they're experiencing. And in the same way, for domestic violence situation, mothers at times are supposed to, they're trying to protect the children by having a straight appearance and they're not showing their cards and what they're undergoing. And that becomes a challenge. Is there an issue with not being able to share your cards with people that adds to the problem?
Yes, so that is the biggest problem, so to say, because the folks that suffer the most from PTSD are those that are in the role where they're supposed to show the most strength. So, so a woman who's a victim of domestic violence in the role of a mother, she is supposed to constantly project the image of a strong person. We have our veterans, we have policemen and folks that are part of our armed forces. They have to show a sort of constantly demonstrate a persona of strength, and they are the ones that have to go through the most suffering when it comes to having to deal with trauma. So yes, and society needs to change. Society needs to change. Our stereotypes of our roles need to change. Unfortunately, popular narratives, our entertainment industry has a lot to do with, media has a lot to do with, and we are all human beings, and we internalize the script that's offered to us. But yes, the expectations that are put from society as large, from the stereotypes that media shows on us, needs to change. Yes, and we as society have to take that first step. That's a very important aspect that you said. Policemen should be shown in television and Hollywood as having a softer side as well. Military individuals in Hollywood and movies have to be shown to have a softer side as well. Yes.
Thank you. So this is a good time to bring in Karen and Alexandra. And I think now this is my understanding, and I could be wrong, and they can probably verify it. I sometimes feel that anyone who is going through PTSD, they may benefit from somebody from a peer group. In other words, a veteran can help a veteran more than a layperson would. And a police officer, the first responder, could be benefiting from the support of a first responder. In a similar way, somebody who's a survivor of domestic violence would be supported by somebody who is also a survivor. And Karen and Alexandra, from your experience of being the front line on this issue, could you share what your thoughts are on this?
So thank you, Senator. I'm going to actually defer to Alex, and Alex is going to talk about that specifically. We do have group therapy on the community level, and we have group sessions within the shelter, and there's so many facets to it. So Alex, if you would, could you talk about how we connect victims to work together?
Absolutely. So I think there's definitely something to that idea that, peer support is very important. We have kind of a multifaceted approach with our support groups. We have those that are based at our safe house that focus more on empowerment and just, resiliency building and stress reduction, and a lot of, connection building between the clients that are staying at our safe house and as well as between the children. And that peer support is really important for the adults, for moms and the adult women, and the adult clients, as well as for the children, because you've got some children who are growing up in these environments where they think it's just them and they think there's something, wrong with them and their family, but they're afraid to share about it and they're afraid to talk and really ask for help because they think that they'll be looked down on. So when the kids are able to get together and actually talk about it, it's like, oh, wow, this isn't just me. This happens to you too. And so it's not my fault. It's not, mom's fault or dad's fault. It's, it's something else. With our community clients also, we have structured support programs. Same thing. They're a little bit more educational in nature, but the peer support is definitely a significant thing. I think from a staffing perspective, we have a pretty diverse staff. We have some who have the educational backgrounds. We have some who have the real life experience. And I think it's helpful, the diversity. Sometimes the clients need that validation that yes, you've experienced this, but yes, you can get past it. And, you know, it's not all you are. You're so much more than just this one experience, this one, you know, time in your life. So really being able to work with different staff, different, you know, other clients that are staying here or participating in our groups is very helpful.
Hmm. Hmm. Thank you so much, Alex, for that. You know, I'm going to ask Sarah, David, and Jerry to chime in. I think all three of you have said something without saying it. And as I was listening, what Sarah, I felt you were saying also was that when you were surviving, you wanted to help others. And when you help others, you are able to heal yourself in the process. And I think, David, you suggested that when you were helping one of your peers, D, in that process. And Jerry, you said something to that effect. So if you want to share that, because it almost is almost like you're drowning, but you're able to swim only if you're able to help others swim at the same time. You can start, Sarah, if you want. You can.
Thank you. Yeah, that is true. I mean, like I said, it still sometimes is a struggle for me. I've come a long way, but it does make me feel very good to guide others and help others, because it is at the same time helping me as well, because it makes me feel like I can turn a negative experience into something positive and, you know, make others understand that they're not alone. You know, a lot of people feel that they're going through this struggle by themselves and they're alone. And that's my goal, is to let others know that there is hope and you're not alone and we can overcome this together.
Amen. David?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. I mean, that's the whole concept between with our peer teams now, our peer counseling teams, was that we weren't really getting much out of bringing in counselors from EAP to do a debriefing. So if we talk about it with our own people, with our own peer leaders, it somehow heals us all. And we went through the experience together. Now we can heal one another together. I think that's real important. And I think it's so important for the people at the top as the peers to start talking, because I think that breaks the mold that we're not supposed to talk about it. We're all tough guys. We need to, you know, hold our tears in. Well, you know what? That's baloney, because we're human beings and we all feel it. So if the peers start talking about it, if the counselors at the top start going to their own people, yes, it heals us. And yes, it heals everybody else. And it says it's okay to talk about this. And that's so important nowadays. I'm sure you guys know that.
Thank you so much for saying it. Jerry?
Well, it's true. What we're just talking about, after I got out of the Army, active duty at 71, on a whim, I decided to join the Connecticut National Guard in 1982 and put 17 and a half years in as a senior trainer and retired a first sergeant. So when I was running a 150-man unit, I had to have the tough face. I had to be the tough guy, and nothing scared me more than ever than to go out at night doing maneuvers, and I'm looking for booby traps and tripwires. And so I would talk to the guys about it, and they looked at me as a Vietnam vet. You know, I wasn't totally crazy. I had life experiences. I'm not looking for sympathy. Okay, I'm looking for somebody who can relate and understand what I've gone through. You put the sympathy act on me, and I will walk away in a heartbeat. You straight up with me, I'll be straight up with you. And I don't know what else to say, except when I retired in 1999, it was a good feeling that I probably had saved other people's lives through my experiences, through my training. And nothing wrong with being a mentor. We all should be a mentor. I've got 60 some years of experience. I don't want to take it with me. Not going to do me any good where I'm going. So I might as well do it right here.
So Jerry, this is a question that I think maybe you could help out. This is somebody, and we have a number of people who are asking questions, and many of them are living with PTSD or have their loved one with PTSD. So we will take our time to seek your broader wisdom and help us out. This gentleman, sorry, this is somebody who's asked, what would you suggest for people who have this but are able to function? How do people advocate for themselves best but not scare people from hearing their stories and needs?
I am the perfect example of that. Okay. And if they want to reach out to you where you could reach out to me, I'd be glad to talk to them. It's to stay busy and have a purpose. But like I said, when I retired, I didn't have a purpose anymore because I was working a lot. But now with the Agent Orange as an advocate, I travel all over the United States talking about it. It's given me a purpose. And I love actually doing that. So yes, just find something that will make you happy and help other people, and that helps you. Helps me.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. I'll ask the two medical questions of you, Dr. Shamsi. One is, how is PTSD diagnosed? And the other part is does group therapy have an effect or a benefit? And they want to also see if there's medical psychological approaches to help live with PTSD. Well, you answered the third one.
Yeah, so how's PTSD diagnosed? The cardinal feature of PTSD is the survivor has to live with nightmares and flashbacks, but that's not always the case. Being reminded of a trauma again and again, that's what sort of flashback means, and it could be, as some of our panelists have said over here, a smell, a shirt lying on the road, for example, memories, cues that take you back to the trauma, or the sensory modalities that remind you of the trauma. That's basically all it takes to get somebody a sort of a diagnosis of PTSD. Yes, there are sort of very strict criteria. If you go on Google, and the American Psychiatric Association and the Psychological Association have a list of 4 points and 5 points, and once you start to have a discussion with a trained therapist or a doctor, they'll be able to sort of weed that out. But it's enough to say that you're struggling with PTSD if there is a trauma that you've gone through a series of low-grade traumas, or 1 or 2 life-threatening traumas, and it reminds you, and it makes you uncomfortable, and it gives you anxiety, and you want to never put yourself back in that situation, chances are that you're struggling with PTSD. That's how you sort of get diagnosed with PTSD or get help with PTSD. As far as groups are concerned, not everybody gets help from groups, because not everybody is ready to talk about their trauma in front of a group. But in terms of the best outcome, talking to others, whether it's your therapist, or it is somebody else who has had the same experience in front of a therapist, talking to one person, talking to a group of 2 or 3 person, that starts to help. But if there is an individual who the risk that we run is that if we say that group therapy is the best therapy, there are lots of survivors that are not ready for that group therapy quite yet, and so we have to help them. We have to empathize with them and understand that everybody is not ready for group. That's the key message that I want to send out over here. Once they are ready, once they have worked with the therapist, once they are ready, they will themselves find that that they are then ready to be part of the group. So I think those were the 2 questions, right? Or is there something else that I'm missing out over here?
No, you're right. The other question is, and this is anyone can chime in, if the spouse or a family member is not the cause of the problem, what can they do to help? Jerry, you may need to unmute yourself if you're speaking.
Okay. I've been having flashbacks at night and dreaming of certain events that have happened in the past, to the point where I've actually been hitting my wife. And the psychiatrist over there has put me on an antidepressant. And I have sleep apnea as well, so I have the sleep pack machine. So, which has helped, and the acupuncture helps. So if anybody out there who's listening, who's going through what I'm going through or have been going through, is the dreams at night and waking up screaming and yelling so loud and soaking wet in sweat. And I don't know why. I don't know why that's happening to me. And I'm sure there's a lot of other veterans out there are saying it's happening to me and I don't know why either.
And anybody else wants to add to that question?
Yeah, sure. I'll add to that because Dee's wife was really good about reaching out to me and to other friends of his and keeping us aware of what was going on so that we were able to help when he needed help, so that when she was overwhelmed, we were still available. And it's not that hidden secret that they're trying to keep undercover that he has PTSD. You know, other people know and other people can help and other people can jump in. Some people might not understand it. However, somebody in my position or other first responders or somebody else in the military would understand it. And so just don't keep it a secret. Reach out if you're a spouse that is experiencing this, and do it with your spouse's permission, but make sure that you have other people to talk to.
Thank you for that. Alexander, Alex, you want to chime in from your interaction with some of the people?
Sure, absolutely. So one of the biggest things that we've seen, family and friends are in a unique position where their validation can mean all the difference when a survivor is looking to either get help or to kind of, wait and hold on to it. A lot of times there's that question where, well, it's not that bad, or maybe I did something, maybe I could have done something different. And so there's like this vicious cycle where just a friend saying, that's not okay, let me be there for you, let's, see what's out there. Not being the friend that says, well, yeah, you could have, had dinner on the table faster, or maybe, this person just had a short temper. Not feeding into that cycle, but instead being there to just provide that unconditional positive regard. Not pressuring the family member, not pressuring the victim, the survivor to seek help if they're not ready, because that can actually be counterproductive and it can be pretty dangerous. But being there to be that safe support when they are ready. We've had family members, friends who have come in with the survivor, come in with the client to our main office, and they'll sit in the waiting room. Sometimes they'll come in, to meet with an advocate, and they're just that safe person that's there to be that supportive, just supportive constant that our client can feel comfortable with, because a lot of times they're sharing things that are very difficult. So to have that person, that support in their life, can be very impactful, because they know that what they're going to say, even if it's not all sunshine and rainbows, they're not going to scare this person away, and this person's going to be there for them, even when things get kind of scary. And it's also important from a safety perspective, because that family member or that friend can actually be integrated into our safety plan for them if they're seeking to actually leave a current domestic violence situation. So the family, friends can actually play a really big, really supportive, very helpful role.
Thank you. Sarah, you want to add, or we covered that answer? Okay.
No, I think she covered the answer. I'm good, thanks.
So here's what I've gotten so far is that this is real. There's a immediate large exposure or that can lead to it, or chronic exposure or high risk that can lead to a person developing it. And then we need not only a recognition by the family, but also need a recognition by the support system, including the workforce. And it is one of those situations where you need to have people join in and be a part of the solution, but at the same time seek appropriate medical help at the same time. So it's going to require a combination of approaches. It's something that is real and that is normal, because when you're exposed with an experience that is not what we are built to experience, it takes special people to do special things, and you can only take so much. And at some point, the body says, or the brain says that we have a problem here, and that's when you have to start the healing process and recognition. Um, uh, Jerry, do you want to? You said something. Well, I won't repeat, but what if you can say to all the people who are listening, the veterans who are struggling and then who are not sharing their stories, because I have so many stories of the veterans who kept it inside, and they made a choice which left everybody sad. Would you be able to say something to people who are listening now or could be listening in future?
Well, you're looking at a prime example of somebody who kept it under wraps for 46 years. I was not diagnosed by the VA until 5 years ago that I have PTSD. PTSD to me is like a 4-letter word. I didn't want to know nothing about it, and I didn't have it. I was in denial. As I look back on it now, I feel bad because I've been married 4 times. My first 2 wives, I feel very bad for what I was doing, and I didn't realize it that I was doing it. Nobody talked to me about it. Well, we have counseling today. The VA has a hotline. Please use it. Call a veteran friend. Call me. But don't judge me. We don't want to be judged. We just want to be understood. And we need to have the tools so that we know how to be understood, so we can pass that on to the other veterans. So, like I said, for me, it's been 46 years. Oh my God, I wish I'd have done that 46 years ago, but I didn't. Don't wait.
Thank you, Jerry. Karen, do you want to share? You've been in the police force too.
Yes, I've experienced coworkers that have suffered for long periods of time. Fortunately, the law enforcement community, I can say on that side, is really looking at mental health. There were a couple of bills that passed that allow these peer counseling programs, one-to-one talking, we're training officers to be able to handle if someone comes to you with symptoms that are concerning or suicidal thoughts or ideas. And I think that the police department is moving in that direction in a positive way. I would like to see it definitely reach out and encompass all first responders. You really don't know. I've trained in trauma with sexual abuse investigations to officers. At a time of a traumatic situation, it's a body's normal response to an abnormal situation. All of your sensory perceptions are heightened, which is why I believe that those sensory perceptions trigger later on. But I just want to say, as far as domestic abuse, again, it's no one deserves to needs to live in a life of abuse. So I really, really want to thank Sarah for sharing your story and giving us a chance to at least talk about what we do at the network. But it is statewide, and it is put up on the Facebook page. There's a 1-800 number. Wherever you are, they will direct you to the agency that's in your area. And I'm amazed by the tireless work by the advocates. They're just wonderful people. doing great things and for families and individuals suffering abuse.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Yes, Dr. Shamsi.
Yes. So one thing that we have learned over the years as part of our psychiatry practice is when should an individual ask for help? Because that's the critical part, is that folks are going through difficult life experiences. Most of the time, we are expected to recover from difficult circumstances. So, but sometimes we don't. So when is it time that we get the message that it is time to ask for help? And over the years, we've discovered that if there is a life experience that you've gone through that you don't want to think about, that you are ashamed or hesitant to talk about, and when you think about it, it makes you feel sad and angry. Those are signals enough that it is perhaps something that you are better off talking to others around you. Seek out, and it's miraculous once you start to connect with somebody else that you start to realize the burden that you're carrying on yourself. So if there is something, as I said, if there is a life experience that you would rather not think about, that you would rather not talk about, and that is taking away the zest in your life, that is the time to talk about it. Hopefully that helps.
So as we come towards closing, I would request if people can make short closing thoughts, with your audience being peers that you may have that are struggling and living with the challenges, but also what policy changes you would like to see, if you could. And I can start, David, with you, and then we can move around different individuals.
Sure. I sound like a broken record a lot of times at the police department, because everything where we have one of those big meetings where everybody's standing there, I end up saying, hey, listen, this is a tough thing to deal with. If you guys need to talk, come talk to me. We have a peer team now. Please step up. Please talk to me. It's hard for us to break that mold that we're the tough guys and we're supposed to keep all our tears inside. What I'd like to see is I'd like to see more officers coming forward and talking about their experiences, talking about the things that bother them. And like you said, you're working at the state level to get laws passed where even EMS is involved in all the, we need that too, because there are people out there that are hurting, and they've got to know that there are people out there that will listen and that are going through the same experiences that they are, and that we're there for them and we will always be there for them. That's what I'd like to see. That's the change I'd like to see out there, is that, let's open up, let's drop the tough guy act, and let's talk about the things that bother us, because it's important for you to get it out there. And there's plenty of people going through the same thing as you, although you feel isolated. So that's what I hope we can change.
Thank you, David. And I can just tell you the bill that we had was SB 231, which we will have to bring back again because of the COVID. We weren't able to do it, but emergency medical service personnel, Department of Correction employees, and the dispatchers were part of it, because the dispatchers are actually there on the phone or are responsive, but at the same time, they're experiencing it. And then they work with their heart, and they don't have a lot of people to talk to at times with respect to their, so we recognize and respect that. It's a matter of time. We are going to pass this. We will pass this as long as I have
very
an
important.
opportunity.
And just so you know, Senator, our dispatchers are part of our peer team. So we have 2 dispatchers on the peer team for that very reason, just so you know. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Alex, you want to say some of the words for people, and then also if any policy issues that you would think?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I think one of the biggest things that has always hit me is when clients come in and they question that something's wrong with them, that they're broken in some way. And I think one of the biggest things I want to stress is that post-traumatic stress, it is a normal response. It can be very challenging to deal with, and no one's going to, question that. But it doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that you're damaged in some way. It just means that you went through something very, very hard. Yeah, and this is your body and your mind's way of coping with it. And when you're ready, please reach out. There's so many different resources out there, and so many different people who are more than willing and able to help, whenever you're ready. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we really want to put out there. I think for the clients that we work with, from like a policy standpoint, is we have a really good foundation with the work that we're doing as far as prevention. And then also what we're doing for like the intervention side of things, but just continuing with the work that we're already doing. Removing barriers is huge. I think we've touched along the housing already, but to have services that are easily accessible, so access to them isn't the primary reason to stay in this relationship. If someone's ready to leave, we should have the ability and the means to, do everything we can to help them, take that next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Karen?
I think that what Alex said is correct, but I also want to just add that, 1 in 4 women is a victim of domestic abuse and 1 in 7 men. And we're not seeing all of it, obviously, in our agency. There are programs out there coaching boys to men, coaching women to be leaders, in which coaches spend some time on a weekly basis talking about healthy relationships. We fortunately have a really good response in our catchment with the schools being on board with that. But I really think that we need to be looking at our youth and relationships and dealing with anger to try to start looking at the preventative side. So that's something that I would really like to see statewide.
Thank you. We'll have Dr. Shamsi, you, and then Jerry, and then we'll have Sarah after.
Yeah, so I would like more screening for PTSD in primary care visits. As a physician, I see our country, our healthcare system has made great progress screening for chronic medical conditions, and that's a good step. We screen for smoking, we screen for sort of weight gain, but we don't do a very good job of screening for trauma. I would like to have more legislation that makes it very difficult for physicians and primary care providers to get away by not screening for trauma. I think as a physician, that would make a huge impact in identifying survivors of trauma of all kinds.
Jerry?
Well, I'd like you to add one more thing to your bill, if you don't mind, there, Senator. Would be, we talked about the EMTSs and the police officers and the fire department for trauma. How about tow truck operators? I ran a tow truck business for 7 years. I covered 4 towns 24/7 and saw some horrific accidents, had to roll the vehicles off of people that were underneath them that were dead. And I don't know of anything or any bill or any place that the tow truck operators can go and talk about, their traumas. And Dave could probably answer that as well, because he, I'm sure, works with them up there in East Windsor.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Sarah, last word before we close. Thank you.
Thank you. What Alex said really struck a chord with me, because I felt that something was wrong with me, that I did something somewhat to deserve this, to be, punished for something. And you know, you just have to realize that you shouldn't bear the burden alone, that it wasn't your fault, that don't let what happened to you define you. Try to turn it around in a positive way. And as Sergeant Wright said, find something that you're passionate about to stay busy and learn to love life again. And I enjoyed listening to everybody tonight, all the different perspectives, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I know we took 20 extra minutes, but I think it was worth it. I want to thank each and every one of you for sharing your perspective. And I want to first start by all the participants, the people who are listening and the ones who wrote. And I know many of the people have shared some of the things. And I know some of my friends who are suffering from PTSD who actually mentioned their names. Ejaz, I got your message about how you're suffering, and Mr. Hunter, about your experience. I just want to hug you all and let you know that you're not alone and you're loved, you're cared for, and we are therefore being your support in any and every shape as a community and people. And Sarah, thank you for your leadership for sharing this, and Jerry, for your leadership for doing what you do. David, thank you for taking care of Dee and being a true brother and a true family. And Alex, what you do every day, and then Karen, what you and your group does, and then Dr. Shamsi for joining in today. And I want to thank Cutter and Sean, who have been helping me behind the scenes for the work that they're doing. Again, this conversation is just making sure that we know and everybody knows that we are there for you. And this is something that is real. This is not a June thing. It's a everyday thing for a lot of people. And then we want you to know that you are not alone. If there's a policy issue, we are there. And if there's a support system weakness in our society, we are there. And right now we have a collective trauma on top of trauma that we are all experiencing with the pandemic and other challenges that we are facing, between economic challenges, racial tensions. Those keep adding up in our lives. But please recognize that the support that individually and collectively that we have is there for each and every one. And we are going to be able to overcome all of these challenges. Thank you so much for your time today. And thank you for tuning in. With love and respects to all. Thank you.